Hey Alex, thought I'd make a video, just give it a shot anyway. I'll upload it to YouTube and then send you a link. Um, I thought this might be as helpful as FaceTime. Of course, FaceTime you can be a little more interactive as far as asking questions, but I thought this might be good too for re-referencing later on. You go to rebuild your motor and you want to put a hot cam in it or something, and you'll have something to reference. So when you put your head back together, I think we left it the other day that we had just put the valves in. Of course, that means putting the springs in and everything else. So basically, we had put all the valves in. I don't remember if I showed you installing these studs, but I mean, there's not much to it. I mean, there's a threaded nut, the big piece that goes in first, and then these adjusters just screw down into it. These little clips have to go on. They're easier to put on once with these adjusters completely out. You can pull them all the way out, and then these snap on. They're snap rings, so they'll snap your fingers for sure. So we were waiting on rockers so I could show you some more as far as putting the head together. But first, let's not get ahead of the game, I guess, as far as putting it together. I believe that we did not do the cam and the cam tires. We talked about it. But the important thing is, I think I told you I numbered these so they'll go back in the same place. Also, there's dowels in the bottom of each one of these, centering dowels. That you got to make sure those are there in place. You can't miss them. Just like your block to your head dowels, two of them. There's two on each set of towers that aligns them. So basically what I did is I put them all back in the same place they were supposed to go, make sure the dowels are there, make sure everything's clean, put them down in place, and just snug the bolts and then run the cam through from the back to the front. Of course, sprocket was off. So you run the cam through the towers, and then what you want is you want to be able to put that cam in there, and then you want to be able to just turn it that easy. Just two little fingers. That's all it should take. That's a smooth running cam right there. I took some like 1500 grit sandpaper, basically polished the inside of the journals. They're aluminum. Just get any minor scratches out, cleaned them up. And of course, cleanliness is godliness for sure. It's a little tight putting it through, just like putting a cam in any motor. It gets a little tight. And then at the end, I put some oil. I make sure I put some oil on the journals so the cam's riding around in oil right now. You can see it's probably oozed out there a little bit. Yeah, you want it oiled up, because you're going to be turning it quite a few times before it without ever getting running. Don't necessarily need like break-in lube, but that'll work. Break-in lube works good too if you're using a new cam. I've always used oil because I'll prime the motor with oil before I ever start it. But so basically, once you get the cam in there spinning good, you want to go ahead and torque these down. I torqued them down to spec. Put some Loctite on the threads, like blue Loctite. Make sure I don't go anywhere. Sometimes you'll find you'll torque it down and then it seems like it tightens up the cam. There could be a little bit of debris somewhere or something. The manual basically tells you to loosen the bolts up and then smack them like with a rubber mallet, a heavy rubber mallet. Give them a good whack and then try retightening it. Sometimes that clears up the issue. You'll have one that's just slightly, it just takes a couple thousandths to be out of whack. Remember, our head was like this. We had it shaved. And that's why it wouldn't turn, because the center one was sitting so much higher than these. So the cam was on a bind. I couldn't even turn it. I might have been able to turn it with a wrench, but there's no way I could have done that. So he took off quite a bit of little material there. And we might see that when we check our white patterns, but the cam really looks good. The journals look good. So we get the cam in, and you put a sprocket on and a bolt, so you'll be able to use a ratchet to turn this over when we start checking things. So that's the sprocket holds it in place too. So you know you got the sprocket on right if there's like hardly any thrust play in the camshaft. Okay, that little bit there is fine. I don't even have the bolt tightened all the way down. So I told you we set the rockers out. You know, look how pretty they are. They're all just got a fresh surface on them basically. So what that means, fresh surface will wear into the surface of these cam lobes. And you want it to wear in properly. If you have a rocker that's already worn a certain way and then you put it against a cam that's already worn the other way, it can lead to really premature wear on both surfaces, could cause some serious issues. It's nice to start out afresh. We didn't have any history on the cam, so I just thought it was wise that we start with fresh rockers. You know, they're basically new, I mean, this way, and it's good old Nissan rockers. I mean, these are $45 a piece, new, if you can find them. If you can find them. So these are basically your original rockers, Nissan rockers, that I paid to have them resurfaced. So we go to do our check. We're checking both the lash pad. We're checking, you can see where the previous wear was on the lash pad, right? And nice in the middle, that's where it should be. Okay, as within, also should be true of the lash pad, you have two different surface. This lash area here is brazed onto this rocker here, so it's a two-piece rocker that they made one. Okay, so you want that load to hit on this right in the middle across the white pattern. You don't ever want to go off either end because that'll cause damage. So what you do is you do either Dicom or a lot of guys use magic marker, works good too. You put some Dicom across there, and then you put it on your lash pad too. You Dicom up your lash pad, and then you go ahead and set your rocker in. Now I already have this adjusted, but the easiest way you can actually put these in by hand if this adjuster is turned all the way down. Right now I already previously adjusted this, but you really want the rocker, the stud to be seated all the way, okay? Unless you have the right tool, like I have, to install a rocker even against spring tension. So this thing, I think I got it for like 70 bucks. And believe it or not, I had to get it from like England or something. I had a hard time finding one in America. It's kind of crazy. Just, there's very few, there's just very few solid lifter cams, motors in production. So most of it is this, nothing directly hits the cam. Usually it's a push rod or a hydraulic lifter and a push rod or whatever. This is, you know, directly, almost as direct as you get from cam to the valve. Okay, but it does go through this rocker, and this rocker has a ratio. And basically they're all the same, but that's all ties into or talks about geometry and how this all gets set up. So basically we want to see the fact that we cut material away from there on the top of this surface, which made the cam drop lower towards the valves. Okay, but at the same time, I think, I don't know if I showed you, the tips of those valves were kind of a little bit boogered up. So they took material off the top of those valves to clean them up. So basically we might have evened out, if that makes sense. The cam went down closer to the valves, but the valves also got some material taken off of them. But at the same time, usually when they grind a valve seat and they resurface that brings the valve up just a hair. But I think we're going to find that they took more off the top. So in the end, what's going to happen, I'm hoping, is that the valve's going to show where it's supposed to, or the rocker, I should say. So we throw the rocker in with this handy dandy tool, and I put it in there. I don't know if you could see that or not. I'll try zooming in. Okay, so this is once again, this is your adjuster. It's a 14 millimeter, and that's your 17. That's your lock nut. So you make your adjustment with this. Just wrench it up and down. And this is an exhaust, so it requires a clearance of 10 thousandths between the lash pad and the lobe. Now I like to have what they call a mousetrap on there. Okay, because what it does, it puts tension on that rocker, and that way the rocker sits square against the lobe. So when you go to take your measurement, it's a better measurement when you use it this way. Now it's a little tight, and to loosen it up, we actually turn clockwise. So what we're doing is we're turning the stud down, which brings the rocker down, which starts to give us clearance there. Doesn't take much. All right, so that's close enough for adjustment to see how she goes. So I'm going to use this ratchet, and I'm going to turn this over in the direction of the motor. And so you go by that spring tension there. And we'll operate the valve a couple times. Now you don't have to have oil on the lobes to do this. That's why I said you put oil in these when you install the cam, because it's rotating on a bearing surface. So we ran that a couple times. I'm going to take this mouse spring off real quick again. And we'll use our handy dandy tool. And we'll pull the rocker out. Now, I probably could have ran it over a couple more times because it's hard to see, but you can see there's a darker area and a lighter area. Let's try the one with the magic marker. I think one of the reasons guys like to use the magic marker probably because it comes off a little easier, a little less wear and tear on you doing your adjustments. And actually they sell a spring when you what they call a test spring, valve spring, that you can install in all these valves, so there's hardly any pressure you're fighting against. But stock springs they're not bad. I mean, they're pretty easy to push against. So, and we only got one in there, so it doesn't take much of one. So you can do one at a time, and you won't have to fight too much pressure. Alright, so we just turn this over a bunch of times. Let's see if it marks. Alright, so see, there you got a better view. Now, you can see that wear pattern. I mean, you could bring it this way a little more. So we're going to lose just a hair of lift. The closer it is to this side, provides more valve lift because of the rocker ratio. But I mean, for a stock motor, that's about where you want it, right there in the middle. I'll zoom back out here. So, I mean, it just don't get any better than that, which is great. So we don't have to mess with it. The adjustment there, I think we're going to find, since these were all done together. See, I put some Datsun on the lash pad, and it's worn it off kind of right there in the center. So I didn't think that was going to change much either. The big thing that causes major damage is when it comes off the end of this surface here. Then you're going to start eating cams and everything else. So now, basically, I need to do this for every one of them. And when I do it, like say I could take this one, and now that I've tested it, I could write this down as number 1 and set it aside, and then label each one as I go, and only doing one at a time. That way I'm only fighting one valve spring at a time as far as pressure. It's kind of a pain in the butt because then you have to put them all back together, but I mean, you saw how fast and easy it was to get a rocker in and out with this thing. I mean, it is, granted, I've been used to doing it, so it goes a little quicker for me, but exhaust is 10 thousandths, and then you go to your intake, and that's an 8,000 adjustment. So sometimes you'll find that that the intake is a little different. Now here I haven't adjusted anything, so we'll start from the beginning. Here's I'm going to take the lock nut loose, and then I'm going to, this little stuff here, and I just stuck on one little spot. Okay, so I'll show you. If you take this all the way down, and you have the lobe all the way out of your way, and I got to pretty much stick it straight up. Okay, that's pretty much fine now. You could take a rocker and slide it in there. You got it, you know, you slide your rocker in, so it slides in. This is sitting on top of your valve, so you just slide it in there. Don't get it like this. If you get it like this, then you're going to be in trouble, and you're going to think you have it on there, and it's not. And believe me, I've seen it done. And then when the engine turns over, this thing turns, and then it goes like this, and all of a sudden your valve is way out of adjustment, and it starts making a hell of a noise. So anyway, when you slide this thing in there, you got to slide it between those two slots. And I'm sliding it kind of in at an angle here. Okay, I got it on the lash pad. I got it in between those two, right in the middle there. And then I'm just going to see if I can. Oh, it's strong enough. Oh, ain't done. I did it on the other one. And boom, pop. It's on there. Okay, so now say it's stupid loose. So now you make your adjustment. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but you basically are turning counterclockwise to tighten your clearance. But what you're doing is you're getting this adjuster up. Raising the adjuster up puts the rocker close to the cam lobe, which gets you closer to your adjustment. And like I said, I like to have these on here when I'm doing my adjustment. It keeps it parallel there. Like we said, intake is 8,000. Wow. I got it all tight already. So then I'm going to turn this clockwise. So I'm turning it down. There you go. So now 8 slips in there. Now let's do the same thing again. We just turn the motor over. Basically, turn the valve train over. We'll do it about 4 or 5 times. Want to make sure it really leaves a mark on that lash pad. Okay. So we take this off. There's no way I'm taking it off with my fingers. I'm using my tool. So this just hooks over the cam, and then the other part like sits on top of the valve spring. Little pedestals sit there on top perfectly. So then you just pull down this, and it squashes the spring, and then you just pull this out. Now look at that, voila. Perfect. Perfect. It's a little harder to tell on top here. Just there's not as much motion there, so it doesn't wear as much of a mark to see. I think I dikened the lash pad before I put it on, I think. Yeah, it's starting to wear off. Maybe the blue is better on the lash pad and the black's better, Magic Marker's better on this. But hey, that works out perfect, so I'm going to mark this number 2. So just line them at 1, 2, 3, 4 down through 12. That's how you do your valve adjustment. So I would do one at a time. So like I said, you're not fighting the other springs, and then get them all fitted. This way you double check things by doing. It's real easy for me to say that, oh, they didn't throw it too far out of spec. They just put it back together. The first 2 were good. Hell, the other 10 are just fine. You don't know that. You gotta check them. Unfortunately, you gotta. It's just part of it, because this is it. I mean, when I'm done here, you should be able to just drop this on your motor, hook up your timing chain, and you're done with as far as the valve adjustment until you run it. Because once you run it, you get it hot and everything else. You know, it puts a little bit of time on it. Then you go back in and recheck all your valve clearances. But after that, probably good for a really long time without having to worry about it. You might want to look at it in an oil change. You know, for me, I could do a valve adjustment now in about 20 minutes. For other people, it's a couple hours. You know, so, but this way you double check, you put everything back together right, okay? And then once you know you have your adjustments right, just this lock nut here, just get her nice and snug. And I'll tell you right now, these Mac wrenches are the freaking best. You want a thin wrench to do these adjustments, because that adjustment stud is there's not a lot of room between the two if you have 2 thin wrenches. But anyway, you want to make sure you tighten these down really good. There's probably a torque rating, but you'll have to have a crow's foot to do that. I've never done that. I've actually taken my dead blow hammer and just kind of tapped them tight, and then I have to tap them untight. Unless you forget it, more than likely they'll never come loose. I think the only one I've ever had come loose is probably because I probably didn't double check. So you can tighten it once you make your adjustment, you do all your adjustments, and then you go back through and you check them again, each one. You gotta double check those. That way your adjustment stays. You checked everything, now you made your adjustments, you want your adjustments to stay, so you make sure you do your lock nuts. And then you're pretty much, you want to put your sprocket on number 1. You should be ready to go with your new timing set, and everything else. And remember, you got to order this fitting here. This is your heater elbow. Wherever you get your timing chain. Let me see if I have an extra one here to show you. Yours was pretty ate up, if I remember correctly. I'm looking for your parts, because I have your thermostat housing. Yeah, I don't know. You might want to. I'd say order a new one for about $15. With this fitting right here, yours is all rusted and corroded really badly. I got your thermostat housing all cleaned. I've sanded on a new surface. It was pretty well pitted. That should at least seal up now. That in the top. I took it on my 12-inch round belt sander and put a pretty fresh surface. It still needs some sealant for sure. But you should be in good shape. You notice I still have tape on the bottom here to protect the machine surface so we don't scratch it up. So that doesn't come off till it's ready to go on the car. So anyway, I hope this is helpful, Alex.